Well, welcome back to our unequal conversation. If you haven't been with us, I highly encourage you jump on our website or jump on the Hoboken Grace app and listen to the last 2 weeks. Because 2 weeks ago, we began to unpack this incredible problem that as we navigate this conversation of equality, we have to confront the fact that all of us are created different. And God intended for that to be something beautiful, something powerful. But because of the fact that one of the fundamental temptations of life is self-glorification, we've turned it into something that's destructive. And make no mistake about it, all of us are tempted by and have given into that temptation for self-glorification. The scriptures call it the pride of life. I want to be better than you. I want to be glorified. Look at me. The scriptures call it the pride of life. And not only do we do this on an individual basis, but we do this in terms of groups. And so my family's better than your family. My group is better than your group. From an early age, we do this. My dad's stronger than your dad. There's this desire for self-glorification. Look at me. And it's been true from the moment that we decided, no, we should be like God. And that temptation that, no, you should get that same glory. And ever since then, we've been clamoring for glory and to be the one who has the glory. We saw how over our entire story, it's over and over again led to incredible tragedy, incredible pain, incredible brokenness. But then last week, we built on that and saw that God doesn't just leave us in that, but he has come alongside, and as our Father, he's given us an incredible example of what it's supposed to look like. Because the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, while they're equal, they're not the same. And we saw how, as they interact with one another, they step into each other's lives, and from their strength, they give generously. They serve one another, but they also recognize the strength of the others. And they recognize their need for the others. And in addition to that, one of the things that's amazing is they don't celebrate their own strength. They celebrate the strength of the other two. They don't seek to glorify themselves. It's literally the opposite of what we do. They don't try to seek to glorify themselves. They seek the glory and the honor of the other two. And as we came to the end last week, we asked this question: what would it look like if we engaged those around us that way? If we gave generously from our strength, from however it is that God has given to us, if we gave generously from that and served in every chance that we could, but then also that we recognized that God had uniquely created them to be able to give as well, uniquely created them to be part of the story in a powerful way, and we recognize their strength, and then to take it to the next level, that we celebrated their strength more than we celebrate our own. That we live for their interest more than we live for our own. That we honored what they bring to the table more than we honor what we bring to the table. How'd that go this past week? How'd it go? I hope that as you went through the week, that question is starting to be part of that internal conversation for you. Especially as you encounter people who are different than you. Or maybe as you encounter people that in the past you've thought, well, they don't really bring anything to the table, and allowing God to speak the truth into that moment. And to become curious. Okay, how has God uniquely created you to bring something into this puzzle, into this incredible story that he's telling? And how can I honor that? How can I celebrate that? God doesn't call us just to eliminate the negative. He calls us to this incredible dream of love, this incredible dream where we step into one another's lives and we honor each other. Instead of seeking self-glorification, we seek the glorification of those around us. And we begin to see how we have this incredible example and how the Father, the Son, and the Spirit, they demonstrate, okay, this is what it's supposed to look like. But we don't just learn the principle of honor. Because when you look at the Father, Son, and the Spirit, it's not just that they're different in terms of what they bring to the table and how they honor that in each other. But one of the other things that you see is that they have very different roles. So when you look at the Father has a leadership role. The Father is the leader. He literally instructs the Son in what to do. You see that the Spirit is actually sent by Jesus. Jesus says, I'm going to go away, so I can send him. And you see that they have these different roles. They have different responsibilities throughout the story. It's not just that they're equal, but then they have different things that they bring. They're equal, but they also have different roles. And we live in a culture. We live in a culture where roles determine value. We live in a culture where we see, well, there are certain roles that are superior, and these are roles in which you're served, and then there are other roles that are inferior, and these are roles in which you serve. And anytime there's any authority at all, we see it as superior and inferior. This is an incredible statement about Jesus. As a matter of fact, it's an incredible insult to him when we look at roles that way. Let me ask you something. Is Jesus the Son? Does Jesus live the role of the Son because he's inferior to the Father? No. No. We looked at the passage last week that says they're equal. That they're equal. Is he in that role because he wouldn't be as good of a leader? No. No. When you view roles that way, it is an insult to Jesus. Jesus isn't in that role because, well, the Father's just a better leader. No. The three understand. No. There needs to be, if we're going to accomplish the mission that we have, there have to be different roles. We understand this when it comes to teams. And inside of teams, you understand, well, you need different people in different roles. And you understand, you can't have everyone playing the same role if we're going to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And so for a football team, you can't have 11 quarterbacks on the field at the same time. It wouldn't work. There are some NFL teams that have no quarterback on the team. I won't mention which ones those are, but you understand. No, it takes different. You need different people in different roles. Now we, because of the fact that we seek self-glorification, oftentimes we use those leadership roles and we use it for self-glorification. And we use it to be served. Listen, Jesus actually talks to his disciples about this. Listen to what he says, Matthew chapter 20, beginning of verse 25. It says, Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them. Lord it over them. He's talking about, he says, you know that the world uses roles to be served. So they use that leadership role. They use that authority to be served, to have others serve them. But listen to how he continues. He says, not so with you. Not so with you. He says, with you, it's going to be different, guys. This is one of the most powerful ways that we can demonstrate to the world that Jesus has changed our lives. Because this is a drastic difference from our culture. And Jesus says, not so with you. Listen to how he continues. He says, instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, or whoever wants to be first must be your slave. He says, no. I want you to understand something. And he goes on to say, I've demonstrated this for you guys, just as the Son of Man, he's talking about himself, did not come to be served, but to serve. I am not using my role to be served. I'm using it to serve. Why? Because, here's the thing. Listen. Every role is about serving. Did you get that? Listen to me. Every role. There are not roles. When God talks about roles, there are not roles that are roles in which you're served and then roles in which you serve. Jesus says, no, guys. If there's anything that you can learn from me, if there's anything I've demonstrated to you, listen to me. It's going to be different than you. Why? Because we don't use roles that way. And the three have taught us the importance of roles. As a matter of fact, they consistently talk about the roles that they play. Even the names that they have speak to it. But they don't see roles the way we do. They understand, no, we have different roles. That doesn't change that we're equal. Why? Well, because every role is about serving. We don't use our roles to lord over. Yeah, the father's in the leadership role. That doesn't mean that role is not more significant than the role of the son. As a matter of fact, they constantly honor each other's roles and the role that they play. But unfortunately, we live in a world where that's broken. And don't get me wrong, God's not saying that all the roles are the same, and God's not saying that there's no need for leadership. He specifically talks about it. Even in Romans 12, he talks about the need for leadership. He's walking through all these different gifts. If it's encouraging, let him encourage. If it's contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it is leadership, let him govern diligently. If it's showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. He's talking about all these different things that we bring to the table and all these different roles that we're going to step into. And he talks about the importance of leadership. But is this role more important than the others? He doesn't even mention it first. It barely made it in. Why? Because he doesn't look at roles the way that we do. And for him, equality isn't about all of us having the same role. No, it doesn't. That doesn't work. He says every single one of us is created different with something unique to bring to the table, but he values all of us the same. Listen to me. We're all created different with something unique to bring to the table, but he values all of us the same. Each of these roles is different, but he values each of them the same. He values each of them the same. And he says, this is the way it's going to be with you. And God knows that we're going to struggle with this, which is why he says, I actually give more honor to the ones that seem or the world sees as insignificant. Listen to how he talks about this in terms of his family, in terms of the church. We find it in 1 Corinthians. He says, the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you. In other words, he's talking about these different pieces and these different roles, and he's saying, you can't say to someone else, I don't need you. You're not significant. The head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. He says some of you are looking at certain roles, some as roles as being dispensable. He says even the ones that the world looks at and says, man, that doesn't really matter that much. He says they're indispensable. How powerful is that? And the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has combined the members of the body and has given, listen to what he says, and has given greater honor to the parts that lacked it. Is it because it wasn't significant? No, he's saying, I understand that inside your culture, you're gonna look at certain roles as being less honorable. And so I'm gonna give greater honor to those roles. So that you understand. No, the roles are gonna be different. But equality is not based on us all having the same role. And this role over here this isn't a serving role, and this role is a served role. No, all the roles are about serving. But again, our culture values people based on their role. And so we clamor for certain roles. If I'm going to be significant, I have to have that role. God doesn't see it that way. God doesn't see it that way. God says, no, I created you all to fit together. I created this unbelievable team. You got to understand, everybody has to step into the role that I created them for. And he does this inside of the family. As he's teaching us how to be able to operate as a family. And he talks about the role of a husband and a role of a wife, the role of a father, the role of a mother, the role of a child. He says, no, I want for you to step into these roles. Some of you are like, I don't have a family. You were born to something. And even if you don't have a family in that way, you have a family because you're a part of this family. And God says, no, I've created you to be able to walk into this. And I'm not calling you to this role because of the fact that they're better at something than you are. No. No, it's because of the fact that, no, this is how we're able to engage and thrive inside of the mission that God has given us. When we begin to look at one role inside of the family as inferior, it is an insult to Jesus. It's not, we have to change the way that we think about roles inside of his family, inside of the church. He's called us to these different roles, the role of elder, the role of hospitality, the different things that we just talked about a couple seconds ago. He's called us to all these different roles. He says, I've created all of you to work together. You're going to engage roles differently and understand, no, this is about us moving forward together. Every role is about serving. But because we're influenced by culture, we clamor for certain roles. We want that leadership role. We value certain roles above others. And sometimes, some of you may be thinking, but I can't accomplish as much as what I could accomplish if I was in that role. And this is true in so many different ways. Because the reality is that sometimes I think, man, you know what? It would be great to be a pastor in Texas where churches are like 20,000 people. But you know what? That's not my role. This is my role. This is my role. And God says, no, this is where I want you. This is the piece of the puzzle that I want for you to play. And we talked at the beginning of the series about giftedness, and I talked about certain speakers that were better speakers than me. And sometimes I'm like, man, well, I want to be. No. This is my role. You say, well, I could accomplish more if I had a different role. Listen to me. Listen, come here. This is so important, so important. You will not, when this is over, you will not answer for how much you have accomplished. You will answer for how well you've followed. Listen to me. When this is over, you will not answer for how much you've accomplished. You will answer for how well you've followed. Which is why there will be some who accomplish much, and as Jesus says, are going to, when this is over, are going to have nothing. Listen to how he says it in Matthew chapter 19. He says, but many. Now, this is an interesting verse because sometimes people forget the many. Sometimes I hear people say, all who are first will be last, and those who are last will be first. That's not actually what Jesus says. Jesus isn't saying, hey, listen, sit back, doesn't really matter. Finish last. That's what I want for you. That's the dream. Finish last, and when you get up there, you're going to be first. No, he's not saying that. But he is saying, but many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. He's talking about, as the world looks at it, there will be many who are in those roles that the world says, oh, that's not that significant. And when they answer at the end of this thing, God's going to look at them and say, you crushed it. And they're going to be first. And then there are going to be many who decided rather than to follow God and, okay, I'm going to step into the role for which I was created. They decided to live a different role, and they accomplished a lot. And the world looked at them and said, look at you. It's incredible. And God's going to say, no, you missed it. Some of you are managers, and you have employees like this. They accomplish so much. They just don't accomplish their job. When the day's over, they have so much to show you that they accomplished. And it can be difficult sometimes, can't it? Because you look at them and you say, okay, yeah, I understand you did all that, but you didn't do what you needed to do. You didn't actually accomplish what I asked you to do. And oftentimes it's because, well, people will see those other things, and I'll be praised for it. If I did what you asked me to do, well, I don't think I'd be praised for it as much. I don't know that it would be that recognizable. Those employees don't last long, do they? Because the team may not have seen it, but the team's going to feel it. Because now we can't accomplish what we set out to accomplish. And we needed you to do what you're on the team to do. We need you to step into it. And to do it with all that you had. Jesus actually says that there will be some who stand before him and have accomplished amazing things. But he says, he's going to tell them, I don't even know you. Listen to what it says, Matthew chapter 7. He says, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only, listen to what he says, but only he who, what? But only he who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. He's talking about, it's about following, not about what you accomplish. It's about following. He says, many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not drive out demons and perform many miracles? He says, many are going to show up and say, man, I did all these amazing things for you. He said, yeah, but you never valued the role of being in my family. I don't even know you. I don't even know you. One of the primary roles we're expected to step into is the role of being his son, his daughter. And God says, no, I want for you to embrace that role. And for those of you who are listening, trying to figure out what this whole God thing is about, I want you to know that Jesus invites you, the Father invites you to be part of his family. And first and foremost, above all else, to be his son or daughter. Jesus gave his life for you to know that, for you to experience that. And he says, I want for you to step into that role. First and foremost, I want for you to step into that role. And if you miss that, if you just go and do all these great things for the world around you and all these great things for him, but you never actually step into that relationship with him, it doesn't matter. He says, no, I've created you all to fit together. And from the beginning, God knew, because of self-glorification, he knew we were going to screw this up. Listen to what he says to Eve. Listen to what he says to Eve after they've stepped out of relationship with God, after they decide to seek their own glory instead of seeking God's glory. Genesis chapter 3, verse 16, it says this. It says, your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you. He says, you're going to desire to rule over him and he's going to rule over you. You're both going to use this roles thing, rather than it being something in which you're able to love and serve one another. Rather than you seeing that both roles, every role is about serving, you're going to use it to be served. He knew. He says, no, it's not what this is about. Don't allow the pride of life to come into the equation. If you just start trying to glorify your role or glorify one role and clamor for that role that will give you that will give you the glory. He says, no. I've created each of you to fit together in this. And I want for you to follow me in the role that I created you for. Because as each part does its work, listen again, Ephesians chapter 4:16. It says, from him the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. As each part does its work, then we're able to grow and build each other up in love. Then we're able to step into that together. We're able to experience this mission together. Let me ask you something. Are you engaging God about, okay, God, what are the roles that you've called me to step into in life? For me, I've got several different roles. I have the role of a pastor. I have the role of a husband. I have a role of a father. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. God calls you to value each of those roles. And I've seen this so many different times with pastors where they're like, okay, I'm gonna do amazing things in this role of a pastor, and they neglect the role of a father. And God says, no. You need to value each of these roles. What are the roles that God's called you into? Are you one day going to stand before him having accomplished a great deal, but not actually having accomplished what you were created for? One of my greatest fears is that one day I'll stand before him and have been very incredibly successful as a pastor and have failed as a dad. That can't happen. And the truth is, people see what I do as a pastor, and I'm tempted to give everything to that role. But God says, no. One day everything's going to be revealed. All of it will be seen. Again, we won't answer for what we've accomplished. We'll answer for how we've followed. What if we started to change the way that we thought about roles? What if, rather than championing our role or championing certain roles and clamoring for those roles, what if we practice what God has taught us? What if we practice what we see with the three, and we started to celebrate the other roles more? What if we started to use whatever role we have, not to be served, but to serve? God has created us all different, with unique things to bring to the table. He's created all of us with different roles to play. And he values each of those roles, and he values each of us equally. It's not a negative thing. It's a beautiful thing if we engage it the way that he does. If we engage it the way that he's taught us. Will you pray with me? Father, I thank you so much for the powerful way that you interact, Father, with the Son, Jesus with the Spirit, the Spirit with the Father, the way that you interact with one another, and the way that you step into these roles, even in equality, that you step into these roles in order to be able to accomplish the mission. I just celebrate, Jesus, what you did, and celebrate the fact that had you not stepped into that role, we would be lost. We would be without hope. Because each of you did, we now get to be part of your family. Father, I pray that you continue to transform our minds, that we would think about this differently, that we would engage this differently, that we would give up the self-glorification. And whether it's our strength or whether it's our role, that we would give that up and we would begin to celebrate them more. We would begin to celebrate others more. We would seek the honor of the other role more. In Jesus' name, amen. Next week, as we continue this conversation, we're going to talk about, okay, but what do we do when this goes wrong? What do we do when someone isn't celebrating the other, when someone's using their role to rule over, or when someone is buying into the temptation of self-glorification and oppressing others? What does justice look like? And how should we as followers of Jesus engage that? Invite someone to be part of this conversation with you next week as we take the next step in navigating this conversation.